Hey, everybody, and welcome to another deep dive. Today, we're going to be looking at a Reddit thread, and this one is all about physical touch.
Ooh, interesting.
So specifically, the question was, what kind of physical touch do men like? And I tell you, the answers were fascinating. There were hundreds of them.
I bet. It makes you think about how often we talk about physical touch as it relates to women, but we rarely hear from men on this topic.
Yeah, exactly. And I think a lot of people would assume that guys aren't really into touch, but the responses we got kind of blew that stereotype out of the water.
Well, touch is a basic human need. We all crave it to some extent, but there's often this unspoken expectation that men should be tough and stoic and not really need that kind of affection.
Right. It's like there's this weird stigma around men expressing their need for touch.
And that can be really damaging. Denying ourselves that basic need for connection can lead to all sorts of problems like loneliness, anxiety, even depression.
So let's dive into some of these responses. What were some of the common themes that emerged?
Well, one thing that really stood out was just how many guys said they liked any or all kinds of touch. It was like they were starved for physical contact.
Yeah, I noticed that too. It's
Yeah.
like they were saying, just touch me however you want. I don't care.
Exactly. And it makes me think about those studies that have shown that men actually receive significantly less non-sexual touch than women as adults.
Really? That's kind of sad.
Yeah, it is. It highlights this gap in our understanding of men's emotional needs. We tend to assume they're fine without all that touchy-feely stuff, but clearly that's not the case for many of them.
So what were some of the specific types of touch that guys mentioned?
Well, head scratches were a huge one.
Yeah.
Seriously, almost every other comment mentioned
Oh,
those.
yeah, I saw that too. What is it about a good head scratch that's so amazing?
I think it's a combination of things. For one, the scalp is packed with nerve endings, so it's just inherently pleasurable to have that area stimulated.
It's like a mini massage right there on your head.
Exactly. And it can be incredibly relaxing and stress relieving. Plus, there's something about having someone else touch your head that feels very nurturing and caring.
It's like that feeling of being taken care of when you were a kid.
Exactly. And then, of course, you have hugs, which were another super popular response.
Yeah, I was surprised by how many guys specifically mentioned hugs.
Me too. And it wasn't just any hug, they were very specific about the kind of hug they wanted.
Like, what do you mean?
Well, some guys were all about those big bear hugs, the kind that just engulf you and make you feel safe and secure.
Oh, I love those.
Me too. And then others talked about the joy of unexpected hugs, those spontaneous bursts of affection that can really brighten your day.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Smart.
It's like a little reminder that someone cares about you.
And then there were those who differentiated between hugs from loved ones versus hugs from acquaintances.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. The context of touch definitely matters.
Absolutely. A hug from your significant other is going to have a different meaning than a hug from your coworker.
Right. It's all about the relationship and the intention behind the touch.
Exactly. And then another type of touch that came up a lot was back scratches and back rubs.
Oh, yeah, those are amazing.
Yeah.
What is it about the back that makes it so sensitive to touch?
Well, again, it's a very nerve-rich area, and it's also notoriously difficult to reach yourself. So having someone else scratch or rub your back not only feels good, but it also taps into that feeling of being cared for.
It's like a primal instinct we have to soothe and comfort each other.
Exactly. And then, of course, you have those more intimate forms of touch, like holding hands and cuddling.
Right. Those seem like small gestures, but they can be incredibly meaningful.
They really can. Holding hands or cuddling creates this sense of closeness and intimacy. It's a way of saying, I'm here with you, without having to say a word.
And there's something really comforting about that physical connection,
Mm.
especially in situations that might feel a little stressful or overwhelming.
Absolutely. Like, imagine you're at a party and you're feeling a little anxious. Your partner reaches over and gives your hand a little squeeze. It's such a small gesture, but it can make a world of difference.
Yeah, it's like a silent way of saying, don't worry, I've got you.
Exactly. It's amazing how much we can communicate through touch without even saying a word.
You know, as we're talking about this, I'm starting to realize just how much meaning we attach to physical touch. It's not just about the physical sensation. It's about what that touch represents.
Absolutely. Touch can convey love, support, comfort, even excitement. It's a powerful form of nonverbal communication.
And I think it's something we often take for granted until we're deprived of it.
Exactly. When we're not getting enough touch, we really start to feel it, both physically and emotionally.
So I guess the takeaway here is that we should all be making more of an effort to incorporate touch into our daily lives.
I think so, whether it's giving someone a hug, holding their hand, or just offering a friendly pat on the back. A little bit of touch can go a long way in making us feel more connected and loved.
And you know what? I think it's time we challenge those outdated notions about men and touch. It's okay for guys to want to be hugged and cuddled and touched.
Absolutely. Men need touch just as much as women do, and there's nothing weak or unmanly about expressing that need.
So guys, if you're out there listening and you're craving a little more physical affection, don't be afraid to ask for it.
And to the partners out there, don't underestimate the power of a hug,
Yeah.
a hand squeeze, or a back rub. Your touch can make a world of difference in your loved one's life.
Like that old saying goes, sometimes all you need is a hug.
I think that's especially true for men who often don't feel comfortable expressing their need for physical affection.
So let's all make a conscious effort to be more touchy-feely. With our partners, our friends, our families, it's good for the soul.
I completely agree. Touch is a gift, and it's one we should all be sharing more freely.
Well said. So I guess that's our deep dive into the world of physical touch as experienced by men.
It's been an enlightening conversation, and I hope our listeners have learned a thing or two about the importance of this often overlooked aspect of human connection.
Me too. Now let's move on to some of those more, how we say, spicy responses. We'll get into those after a quick break.
You know what's really interesting is how all this talk about touch ties back to these bigger ideas about masculinity, like how are men supposed to act and feel?
Yeah, for sure. Like we've been talking about how guys are often told to be strong and stoic and not show too much emotion.
Right. It's like there's this unspoken rule that men aren't supposed to be needy or vulnerable, especially when it comes to physical affection.
Exactly. And I think that can make it really hard for some guys to express their need for touch.
Oh, absolutely. They might feel like they're going to be judged or made fun of or seen as weak.
Right, like if a guy asks for a hug, it might be seen as weird or even unmanly.
Which is so messed up because we all need touch. It's a basic human need.
Totally. And denying that need can actually have a negative impact on a guy's well-being.
Oh, for sure. It can lead to feelings of isolation, loneliness, anxiety, even depression.
So how do we challenge those outdated ideas about masculinity? How do we create a culture where it's okay for guys to express their need for touch?
Well, I think it starts with having open conversations like this one, where we normalize the idea that men have emotional needs, including the need for physical affection.
Right. It's about recognizing that vulnerability isn't a weakness. It's actually a sign of strength and self-awareness.
Exactly. It takes a lot of courage to be open about your needs and desires, especially when those needs go against societal expectations.
You know, it makes me think about that one comment we saw from the guy who was a tradie.
Oh, yeah, the one whose hands were always sore from work.
Right. He was saying how much he loved getting hand massages. And it wasn't even about anything sexual. It was just about that feeling of care and relief.
That's such a beautiful example. It really highlights how touch can be a powerful form of caregiving.
Totally.
Oh.
And it doesn't always have to be romantic or sexual. It can just be about showing someone that you care about them.
And you know what's amazing is that touch has actual physical benefits, too.
Oh, yeah. Like what?
Well, massage, for instance, has been shown to reduce muscle tension, lower blood pressure, and even boost the immune system.
Wow. So it's not just about feeling good in the moment. It can actually improve our health.
Exactly. It's like a natural remedy that we often overlook.
I'm starting to think we should all be prescribing more hugs and cuddles.
Me too. But of course, it's important to remember that consent is always key.
Right. Not all touch is welcome or appropriate. And it's crucial to respect each other's boundaries.
Absolutely. We need to create a culture where people feel comfortable saying yes or no to touch, and where those boundaries are always respected.
Well said. Now, we've been focusing a lot on the positive aspects of touch, but I think it's important to acknowledge that not all touch is positive.
Yeah, that's true. We saw a comment from someone whose ex-girlfriend misinterpreted his desire for cuddling.
Oh, yeah, I remember that one. It
Oh.
sounds like it led to some pretty uncomfortable situations.
Right, and it highlights the fact that touch can be interpreted differently by different people.
Yeah, what one person might find comforting or playful, another person might find intrusive or even triggering.
Exactly. So clear communication is essential. When it comes to touch, we need to be able to express our needs and preferences clearly and respectfully.
And we also need to be receptive to our partner's cues.
Right. Sometimes a subtle shift in body language or a change in facial expression can tell us a lot about how someone is feeling.
Exactly. And if we're not paying attention to those cues, we could end up crossing someone's boundaries without even realizing it.
Which is why it's so important to have open and honest communication about touch in any relationship.
Totally. And it's not just about romantic relationships. It's about all our relationships with friends, family, coworkers.
Right. We need to create a culture where people feel comfortable talking about their needs and preferences around touch.
And where we all feel safe and respected, no matter what.
Beautifully said.
We've talked a lot about like general touch and affection and stuff,
Mm.
but there were also a lot of comments in that Reddit thread that were a little more on the spicy side.
Yeah, for sure. Like, we can't talk about physical touch without acknowledging the role of sexuality.
Exactly.
Hmm.
And it's interesting because even though those comments were very specific about what they found pleasurable, they still tied back to that same core need for connection and intimacy.
Absolutely. Like, sex, when it's healthy and consensual, can be an incredibly powerful way to connect with a partner.
Right. It's not just about the physical act. It's
Mm.
about the emotional intimacy that comes with it.
Exactly. And just like with any other form of touch, communication is key.
Totally. You need to be able to talk to your partner about what you like, what you don't like, and what your boundaries
All
are.
right. It's about creating a space where both partners feel safe and respected, and where they can explore their sexuality without fear of judgment.
And I think that's something that's really important to emphasize because so often there's this pressure for guys to be like these sexual studs who know exactly what they're doing.
Yeah, and that can be really damaging because it prevents them from being honest about their needs and desires.
Exactly. And it can lead to all sorts of problems like performance anxiety and a lack of intimacy in relationships.
So it's really important for guys to feel comfortable talking to their partners about sex and to know that it's okay to not know everything.
Totally. And for partners to be understanding and supportive.
Absolutely. Communication is key in any relationship, but it's especially important when it comes to sex.
So, okay, we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about the different types of touch that men enjoy, the importance of context and consent, and the impact of societal norms on how men express their need for affection.
And we've also explored the incredible power of touch, both physically and emotionally.
Right. It's clear that touch is essential for our well-being and something we should all be making more of an effort to incorporate into our lives.
I agree. And you know what? I think this conversation has really highlighted the importance of challenging those outdated ideas about masculinity.
Yeah, for sure. Like, it's okay for guys to be vulnerable and to express their need for touch.
Absolutely. There's nothing weak or unmanly about wanting to be hugged or cuddled or held.
So guys, if you're out there listening and you're craving a little more physical affection, don't be afraid to ask for it.
And to the partners out there, don't underestimate the power of your touch. It can make a world of difference in your loved one's life.
Well said. So I guess that wraps up our deep dive into the world of physical touch as experienced by men.
It's been an enlightening conversation, and I hope our listeners have gained a new appreciation for the importance of touch in all its forms.
Me too.
Yeah.
And if you want to explore these ideas further, I encourage you to check out the Voices of the Soul podcast.
We have tons of episodes on relationships, personal growth, and all sorts of other fascinating topics.
And for those who prefer a more visual experience, be sure to subscribe to the Shauna Pelage YouTube channel. You'll find beautifully crafted videos that will challenge you to think differently and live more fully. So until next time, keep those hearts open, those minds curious, and those hands ready to embrace the power of touch.
Farewell, dear listeners, and may your lives be filled with warmth, connection, and the joy of human touch.